Good evening to all, and welcome to the Book and Author Society's Fall Series. I'm Kathy Russ, and I have the privilege of being the president of the Book and Author Society. And with us tonight, we have two very special guests, Angeline Boulley and Melissa Isaac. If this is your first time at a Book and Author Society event, I'd like to share a little background. The Society's mission is to increase awareness of published materials and the writing process, in short, books and authors, and to promote literacy. We do this by offering grants to libraries and other literary organizations and literacy organizations as well. Prior to the pandemic, we hosted 2 luncheons per year, but have transitioned to virtual events, which don't bring in nearly as much money. So we appreciate your support by attending tonight's event. And you can also support the Book and Author Society by purchasing a book, hopefully this book, from our bookshop.org link on our website, which is bookandauthor.org. By doing so, you're not only supporting the Book and Author Society, but you're supporting independent bookstores as well. And the small commission that we get on these sales covers the cost of sending you a signed book plate. And if you have Firekeeper's Daughter, you can see how beautiful it is. This is what the book plate looks like inside. And this is what it looks like, not in a book if you can see it, but take my word for it. They are beautiful. They are the most beautiful book plates I've ever seen. And they look just like the cover of the book, which is also very beautiful. So if you are interested, please purchase a book, a copy of Firekeeper's Daughter from bookshop.org, and make sure to fill out our post-event survey after tonight's program, because what we'll do is we'll ask for your bookshop.org order number, which will give us your address so we can make sure your book plate gets to the right place. So thank you so much for your support. And even if you don't purchase a book, we're just really glad you're here and that you're joining us for this wonderful event. I want to go over a few housekeeping details before we get started. Our guests are going to chat for about a half an hour or so, and then we will start the questions and answers. We've left plenty of time for questions and answers, so please make sure to type your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we will make sure to get them answered for you by the end of the program. At any point in the program, feel free to just type that in, and we'll prompt you to throughout the program, just to remind you that it's perfectly fine to ask whatever you'd like. So with that, I am going to introduce our 2 wonderful guests this evening. Angeline Boulley is an enrolled member of the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians. She's a storyteller who writes about her Ojibwe community in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. She's a former director of the Office of Indian Education at the U.S. Department of Education. And Firekeeper's Daughter is her debut novel. It's hard to believe because it's just fantastic. And I have to throw this in because after I do the introductions, I have to go away. So Angeline, I have to tell you, this book was one of those books where I stayed up way too late reading it because I just couldn't put it down. I finished it yesterday and I dreamed about it last night.
Oh, wow.
Just fantastic, just fantastic. So Firekeeper's Daughter is her debut novel. It debuted in March 2021 on the New York Times bestseller list for YA fiction. And Netflix is developing the book into an original series with Higher Ground, which is Barack and Michelle Obama's production company. I really want to mention too that Angeline is the featured speaker at the Oakland Literacy Council's Ex Libris event, which is being held next Thursday, October 28th at 7:30 p.m. in person at the Village Club of Bloomfield Hills, but you can also attend virtually. So if you're interested, please do check out their website at oaklandliteracy.com. Now it's also my pleasure to introduce Melissa Isaac. Melissa Isaac is Anishinaabe Kwe from the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan. And her Anishinaabe name is Swan Woman. She is Sturgeon Clan. She is a wife and mother to 4 children. She's a former elementary teacher and lifelong educator. She enjoys traveling to powwows with her family where she dances woodland style. And Melissa prides herself on having big auntie power. So welcome to both of you. Miigwech for doing this, being our guests. With that, I'm going to leave you and just enjoy your time in your conversation.
Thank you.
Oh, miigwech for that introduction. Well, bonjour and welcome everybody. I'm honored to be here tonight with the beautiful and stunning Angeline, and we were just kind of exchanging makeup tips right before we started the series here. So before we begin, I do want to say miigwech to the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribal librarian Ann Heidemann for making the recommendation to for me to be Angeline's conversation partner this evening, and then also to the Book and Author Society for accepting her recommendation and for me to be so lucky to be here talking with Angeline. So it's a big honor. We're here.
We're here. Yes. I've got my blanket hanging up. I've got my tea, and I'm ready to serve big auntie power.
Big auntie power, yeah. So tonight we want it to be laid back. We are going to have tea time with aunties, and we both have our mugs of tea here. Get after it. What does your mug say, Angeline?
It's
Oh,
Michelle Obama on it.
perfect.
Her
More big
official
auntie
portrait.
power.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's awesome. What kind of tea are you drinking?
I am drinking it's berry and something else. Blackberry and sage, I think. It's pretty
Ooh.
good.
Yeah, berries and sage. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm drinking dandelion tea.
Ooh.
Dodo Shabojibik, which is mother's milk root in our language, and that helps with a few different things, but mostly heartburn.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm like, here, I'm gonna make some of this dandelion tea, but I also have it sweetened with Z's Bachwood, maple sugar,
mm-hmm.
so some natural sweetener in there.
Yep.
And then I want to thank my colleague Jennifer Lapointe, who I believe is in the audience, for my Get After It mug, because she understands that anti-power that we were talking about. Oh yeah.
I have felt like an auntie to you since you were 12 years old. So maybe we should start by just telling everybody about our connection, because it
I
is
agree.
long, it is strong, and it is nourishing on so many levels.
Yeah, I agree. We've known each other for quite some time, if you haven't guessed that already. Oh gosh, where do we start? Well, I'll let you start it off.
My first job working in a tribal community was working for the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe. I was the student parent advocate at West Intermediate School in Mount Pleasant, and Melissa was one of my 44 students, 7th and 8th grade, and right from the get-go, a leader, a natural leader, and someone who would speak her mind and speak up for those that hadn't quite found their voice yet.
Yeah, well, big much for that. So I'll give you my perspective on that. Angeline, as she mentioned, when we were in the lovely middle school ages, had 44 of us, and we're so sorry. Like, I'll tell you right now, because I remember our antics. But yeah, no, I just remember Angeline coming in, and I was just blown away because she was just young, independent. She was in college and had her own house, and we just thought that was the coolest thing. And she dressed really awesome. And I just remember thinking like, ooh, someday I want to do what Angeline does, and I'm gonna work in education. And so I was never quite a parent-student advocate, but Angeline was the director of education for my tribe, and that was like my goals, my life goals, was to do what Angeline did. And so guess what I do today?
Yep.
I am the director of education, and I was totally inspired by just everything. Her humor, I mean, that laugh, that auntie laugh that you heard, we heard that quite a bit when we were in middle school and beyond. And just everything that you've accomplished so far is it's amazing, but we aren't surprised. because you always had that presence. Like you
That's
just walked into a room and commanded it, and it was, I don't know, very as impressionable young people, just this role model figure, this very positive role model figure to follow. And thank you for that.
miigwech.
Yep. So definitely have a history. And so tonight what we wanted to do, and we, of course we conversed just a little bit right before and said, is there any tea that you want me to stay away from? And she said, no, we're free to talk about whatever, which is, good. I have some topics that we could probably get to. But also really wanting to ground ourselves and do things as Anishinaabe Kwe, like as naturally. So we're not going to do like a formal interview Q&A kind of situation here, but just really grounding ourselves in story. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And Angeline has shown us one way that she does that, and that's through her writing. They mentioned her book and, Firekeeper's Daughter. And, I have my signed copy, my signed special copy. And just kind of bringing us together to talk about some things. But I do want to start out, I got to give a shout out. So my daughter, Valerie, she's 4 years old. And you see that? The title of her book is Valerie. The author is Valerie. She's 4 years old. So this is sad. This is mad. This is great, as you can see with the little hearts. This is happy. And this is, she said it's emotional. It's a big word. So I was pretty proud of that as her mama. And then finished.
Wow.
Yeah. So that kind of got me wondering, what's your earliest memory as a writer? Do you recall?
I do. It's kind of a sad story, actually. I used to write in a diary, and then one time I was looking through my pages or went to the next page, and I saw that my mom had written me a note in there. And she said, she wrote something very beautiful, like, you're very sweet and I love you very much. But I felt so violated, like she read my diary, and it would break her heart to know that it had that impact on me. But so I didn't write for a long time because I worried about someone reading something that I didn't necessarily want to share with them. And so it just made me hold back on what I wanted to put on paper.
Okay, yeah.
But in school, I always did really well on any essay question. And the math and science, not so much. And but yeah, writing, I could always express myself in writing. I just had to figure out when it was safe to do that. And school was one way that it was safe for me to express myself in essay responses.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I understand the level of vulnerability there is when you ground yourself in story. It's a very vulnerable place. And yeah, I can connect with that because yeah, academic writing, it's very safe. And it's almost rewarding. Like I'm a real academic. So it's like I make this
PhD on the path.
On the path. Yes, I finished my first year, but there's just something so satisfying to me I guess it's not very creative. I'm just putting these facts down and it's organized and it's tidy and you get really good feedback and that's just so satisfying to me. But you asked me to write anything creative. Oh man, it's difficult because of that vulnerability. Like you don't want to put something on paper that, is going to hurt somebody's feelings or, elicit, some kind of controversy, and you have the stress of carrying all that around. So yeah, I definitely
Hmm?
can connect with that. Okay, so we have some questions here already. So I'm going to go ahead and read the first one, and this is from Aaron Payment. You may be familiar with him.
Oh, yes.
It
My
says
favorite cousin.
he lets us all know that you're his favorite, he's your favorite cousin. He's very proud. All right, so it says, not a question, just a comment from Angeline's tribal chairperson to tell everyone how proud we are of our Sioux Tribe citizens. Changing the landscape and paving the way for other Anishinaabe authors is respected. And he says, on a personal note, I'm sitting in the deck in the back, our Angeline and my grandma, our grandmother's house. Our grand would be so proud. Cousin Aaron. Oh, so his grandma's house is then in the Sioux?
Yeah, it's in the Sioux, and he owns it, and that's where he lives. And yeah, so my dad left Sault Ste. Marie as a young man and joined the Navy and met my mom, and she's not Native. Met her in Chicago. And so we were raised in Southwest Michigan, probably about an hour outside of Chicago, but just in the state border of Michigan. And that's where we grew up. But every summer we would go to Sault Ste. Marie. Well, I say every summer, and for funerals, we would go make that 8-hour trip across the bridge and stay with our grandparents. If it was good weather, we would be out on Sugar Island. There was a small cabin out there where we would stay. And just, I have really good memories of that. And of course, of my grandmother was just everything. She was just just pure love.
Yes, grandparents are good medicine for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing that I was talking with Summer about, our good friend Summer, I said, oh man, I don't want to have like a typical interview with Angeline, but I do want to try to discuss things or, ask her things that maybe she's never been asked or that maybe she hasn't discussed, which you've had so many interviews. I don't know how we're going to do that. Maybe we've already started doing that. But one of the things we were really impressed about, and things that I have heard because I've been invited to book clubs to, discuss that as a fellow Anishinaabe Kwe. And one thing that comes up quite frequently is the level of authenticity, because people who are Michiganders are like, hey, I know that place, or man, I know the feeling when I walk into this particular building or I see, the water, and your description of that. And, there's so many layers of things that people can relate with. And I've heard you talk before about like hockey. I'm like, how does Angeline know so much about hockey or like the FBI stuff? And it's like all this lingo in there. And that's something that I said, she's just, born and raised Upper Peninsula gal. So is there anything that you want to respond to as far as, or comment on as far as the authenticity of all those layers that are in your book?
Oh, honestly, when a Nishkwewag comes, when I'm meeting with readers and doing a book signing or an event, and sometimes a woman will come up to me and she doesn't even have to say anything, but she lets me know that she felt seen in the story and that I got it right. And that's what I truly set out to do. And so that means everything to me. I lived in Sault Ste. Marie for, I think, about 15 years. I worked for my tribe. My son played hockey. I've never played hockey a day in my life. And yeah, I love Sault Ste. Marie. and I always feel so connected to my grandma and my cousins and other ancestors that that of course I hear about, but uh, are not with us. And I just that connection to the land and to stories. That's what really pulls me to Sault Ste. Marie. And so I kind of wanted the book to maybe feel like an homage to it. And I wanted Donna's to represent or be a personification of the major influences in Sault Ste. Marie. So, being Ojibwe from Sugar Island on her dad's side, and then being non-native on her mom's side, but heavily influenced by the early French explorers and Italian stonecutters that emigrated to help build the Sioux Locks. I mean, I really tried to add layers into the story and really get at something beyond the presenting mystery thriller. It's like dressed up like a mystery thriller, but there's a lot of layers. And at its core, I really wanted to talk about identity. And it's like once we claim our identity for ourselves, that's kind of like a shield. It helps us. And I believe the earlier you do it, it changes your life. I think I claimed my identity later. And so if the book helps young people to really think about it and know that they're loved and that they're from, communities that think about them and care about them, that's something else that books can do. And so, books are good medicine.
Yeah, for sure. I had just started reading the book, and right away, I mean, she goes and she lays her sema before she goes on her run. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I do that. And I know you don't know that, but I do that. And as I continue to read, like the first 3 chapters, I told my husband, I said, this book feels like home. And I've never had that experience. And I've read a lot of books being an educator. And this is the first time that it actually felt like that. And also, it's the first book that made me snort laugh. And I was like, oh, that's horrible. That is terrible. So, I mean, it made me crack up so hard. And yeah, I'm like, yeah, that is powerful medicine if you can get me to snort laugh. That was the first time I heard myself do that. But one of our comments actually one of the Q&As has to do with identity. And so I do want to read that because it connects so well with what you just said. And this is from Kara Hotchkiss. In the book, Donis identifies as an Anishinaabe Kwe and also recognizes her French heritage, and at times struggles to find her place in both. What drew you to this aspect of her character? Was it personal for you somehow, or someone you know? I made a strong connection with the character, and I appreciate that point of view. And she says, miigwech.
Miigwech for the question. You'll notice that throughout the story, Donis is many things, and she claims her Anishinaabe identity. She never once refers to herself as in percentages or fractions or anything like that. She's Ojibwe, and the other things that she is, the other parts of her identity, it doesn't lessen being Ojibwe. And so I sometimes when I do presentations or talk about the book, that the moderator says something like, oh, and she's half Ojibwe. And it's like, no, she's Ojibwe. And I think that's kind of changing. I try to change the way that people perceive that whole, like, and with her brother, people say, oh, that's her half brother. No, that's her brother. And I think that writing about my community those are just things that are. And so I'm very thankful for people who pick up on it and get that, because that was also something I really wanted to convey. Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said about Donna's being many things. And that's one of the things, one of the points that I wanted to convey or get across to the audience tonight. When we talk about Donna's, like early on, she identifies herself as a niece, and to Aunt Teddy, who, by the way, is like my favorite character of like the whole book, and we can get into that. I think you know why, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely Aunt Teddy's my favorite. But she also serves as an auntie figure to her young cousins, Perry and Pauline.
Yes.
And her, she, to quote what the book says, I love when my twins call me auntie. And so I wondered if we could talk about, we opened up with big auntie power, and what does that mean to Anishinaabe people, or even just all indigenous communities? What is the role of auntie, and what does that mean to you?
It's a sign of respect to a woman that you don't look at as a peer, but as someone uh, older than your peers, but someone who you look up to. Sometimes it's casual, just to say hello to someone, or hello, auntie, or that. But for Donna's, it's other people might be Aunt so and so, or Aunt this, or Aunt that, but Aunt Teddy is auntie, and that's how she refers to her, and that relationship is just so special. And Donna's father wasn't in the picture for many years, and it was really Aunt Teddy that makes sure that Donna's knows she's a firekeeper. She's part of that family, that land, Sugar Island, and she's that connection for Donna's to her dad. And I've been so influenced by strong Nishquewag in every community I've ever been in. And I just wanted to honor that. And yeah.
Yeah, and you do an excellent, phenomenal job with that. And just to kind of add, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with describing what aunties mean in our community. I remember growing up, oh, that's Auntie so and so, that's Auntie Angeline, that's Auntie, just anybody who was, had this level of respect. And I remember my non-native friends saying, like, oh, you got a lot of aunts. And I said, well, I mean, they're not like biologically my aunts. And they were like, oh, and also the fact that we call them auntie. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I've never heard anybody really call their aunts aunties. Like, I know a lot of res people who call their aunts, aunties. And, even raising my own children, I raised them that way too. And so, like, when you come into town, I'm like, oh, that's your Aunt Angeline. And they just take it for what I tell them. And they understand that, there's a level of respect that goes with that, because not just anybody, for me, when I'm talking to my kids, are auntie. And I also think that we're in a transition in our lives, where I'm kind of growing into those auntie shoes, and really realizing, like, oh man, there's a lot of young, impressionable people, nieces and nephews, that need our medicine.
Mhm.
Because auntie it's a medicine, and it's soothing, it's comforting. And when you signed my book, I was like, got all misty eyed, because there's something about when another Anishinaabe Kwe calls you my girl, like, it's all right, my girl, like, come on, my girl. Oh, that's just like the biggest, warmest, fuzziest hug, where it feels safe, and you're protected around those people. And
Yeah.
I just really wanted to convey that, because they also don't take any business. for people. I love that about Aunt Teddy. And her blanket dance, and I get asked that, is that like a real thing? I'm like, oh, it used to be. I recall my mom and my aunts heading out the door, and I like that's all they would say. And when I read the book, and I'm like, she never really told me what was going on, but I'm like, oh, that's what they were doing. And I just knew it meant business. Like that's all I knew. But definitely, protectors and defenders. And I know you've done that for all of us here. And, there's nothing I could say I could ever thank you for the positive path that you put a lot of us on. We have a lot of successful Anishinaabe Kwe here that were directly influenced by you. And that's, one of the things that I hope that I can do for the little nieces and nephews coming after me, is just to leave that legacy and just know that, if anybody needs you to give somebody the business, they know who they can come to. But if they also need that, that auntie love, that unconditional auntie love, that, it can be tough love, but it can also be that warm and fuzzy love too.
Right.
So when we talk about in big auntie power, Angeline is that. Like that's big auntie power right there.
I learned from the best.
Yeah, yep. So are there any aunties that you want to give a shout out to while we're
Yes, I do. Audrey Falcon, Bonnie Ekdahl, Mary Pelcher, Carla Sinaway, Charmaine Benz. I just, yeah, I don't know why these women put up with me or took me under their wings. I don't know what or why. I'm just so thankful. And when I first met them and started working in your community, I was like, oh, that's how I want to be someday. Oh my gosh. But I'm such a screw up. I mean, I'm like barely making it, and just, and then the more that I got to know the women and they opened up to me, and I was like, wait, they went through hard times too. I mean, there's hope for me. I don't have to have it all figured out, at 24. There's hope. And I think that that's just so comforting. And I've always tried to do that in every community I've ever worked in, is to really look out for young women and, give that encouragement and, that saying, catch them being good. And it's just like, tell someone you see what they're doing and that you're proud of them. And just the way they're, a young person's face lights up when they feel seen. That's half the work we do, is just validating our kids, that they matter and that they have a community that supports them.
Yes, that is a beautiful legacy, and I'm a product of that legacy, I'm proud to say. So yeah, it's working. And those ladies that you named are still here supporting and guiding, and I just, telling us, with that. I mean, and even if they get after you, they scold you, that's what, you listen.
Oh
And
yeah.
you just kind of hear what they have to say, and that's what leads us down that good path. So let's see.
Remember when we used to go running from the tribal admin building to the corner store and back, and that was like 1 mile to go to the corner store and back. And sometimes I would go run after work, and sometimes I'd have like one person with me, and other times I'd have like they bring like someone would bring Loopy or bring another, like someone's little sister. And pretty soon I felt like the Pied Piper, just like doing my little slow jog to the corner store and back.
I do recall that. Yeah, Summer, who is a mutual friend of ours, we're the same age. We've been best friends since elementary school. I remember she ran with you consistently, and she was like, come on, you gotta come with us. And like, there's no way that I can ever be a runner. Like, are you crazy? A mile? Like, that's way far. And So she talked me into it, and thankfully, like you said, Luby was there, Summer was there, and it was like so manageable. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I only went a couple times. Summer was a consistent one, but yeah, no, I do remember that we would just jog on the res and, follow your lead, running the streets to the store and stuff. So yeah, I do
Yep.
recall that early on. All right, so we have 11 questions in here. And it's actually time for us to wrap up and take questions. And so we're going to transition to that. And I think we're going to have some help there.
I feel like I could talk, like,
I know.
I know, like, I feel like I want a camera to be there the next time we're at China Garden in Mount Pleasant. Because when I'm going from my house in Southwest Michigan up to the Sioux, Mount Pleasant is my stopping point. And so sometimes I'll message Melissa and our friend Summer and be like, can you do lunch at China Garden? I'll be in town, rolling into town about here. And then just the conversation is always just so good. I mean, it just makes you just feel so good that our paths, that we're friends, and that it's just a delight to see, young ladies grow into strong women and just paying it forward. And
we had the best role models. We had the best role models. All right. So
okay. Hi, and miigwech to both of you. It is so good to hear you talk. But we do have a lot of questions, so I want to make sure people are so in love with this book and the characters, and they just want to know more. So our first question is from Katrina. Hi, Katrina. Katrina says, I absolutely love Uncle David, his relationship with his family, and how you turned him into an evolving character, even though his death occurred before the story began. Other than Donis, who is your favorite character and why?
Gosh, I'll go for someone that Macy is one. She's kind of that mean girl, but everything she says is just sharp. It's just right on target. And sometimes there are those young women that they have a way of saying stuff and putting you in your place. And it's kind of like they're like a mini auntie, like already they're just kind of letting you know the business. And so Macy is just, I think she's a scene stealer. Yeah.
Okay, this one's actually from Melissa. Melissa, Martha wants to know which part of the story made you snort laugh.
it was the part where they were reading the billboard and the election signs. I don't know if anybody's on here that hasn't exactly read it, but I do not want to ruin that moment for anybody, but it's that part.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay, this is a question from Melanie. Hi, Melanie. Melanie wrote, when setting out to write, did you start with a plot? Did you know you wanted it to be a mystery thriller? Did you start with the character or the setting, honor of the women in the community? What was the evolution? And then she goes on to just say, I just have to add, this book spoke to me so strongly, and I so look forward to following your work. And then, do you have any other recommended authors from your community? So a bunch of questions.
That's
there.
like multiple.
That was a good strategic
like
way, Melanie, to get multiple questions.
Quickly, because I have talked about this in other interviews, but I had the story idea when I was 18. A friend went to a different high school, told me about a new guy, thought he was my type. I never met him. Turns out he wasn't my type. He didn't play sports, which that's what I, was all about in high school. And it turned out that he was an undercover cop, and he was there to find out who the suppliers were. And they had a huge drug bust before graduation, and they had a school assembly, and that student that cop student guy made like talk to the student body. And so my friend who told me about it, I just thought, oh, wow, what if we would have met and liked each other? And then it was really the thought of, what if it wasn't that he liked me, but needed my help? And then that turned into, why would an undercover investigation need the help of an ordinary 18-year-old Ojibwe girl? And then just really my career working in Indian education and just working backwards, working the puzzle pieces like, oh, if it was a federal investigation, if it was this, if it was that, she actually might be the ideal person. And so that was really the start to it. Other authors that I love, Marcy Rendon, she is White Earth, and she writes this mystery series. The first book is Murder on the Red River. And my dad says that Marcy writes the way Anishinaabe people see the world. She writes with such description that you feel like you are right there in the truck with that character, and you're seeing the wheat like blow in the wind. And it just, yeah. She's a beautiful, beautiful writer. Cherie Dimaline is a favorite, and her book, The Marrow Thieves, is one of, I would say, the top 3 books of my life that just made me feel everything. And I was able to read the sequel to it, and it comes out tomorrow. And I will be interviewing Cherie for her book launch. So many wonderful, Darcy Little Badger, Kelly Jo Ford, Cynthia Leidick Smith, Erica T. Worth. She's got this book called Crazy Horse's Girlfriend. And I think that chapter 1 should be taught in every MFA creative writing program, because the way it sets up voice, anyway, I could go on and on and on.
That's great. It's good to have a list. It's good to have a list in your back pocket. And I'm so glad that people are asking for more. Here's a question, Angeline, from Leanne, who says that the book, as you said earlier, has many layers to it. Every layer felt, as Melissa said, authentic. I'm curious, as the author, were there any layers where you did extensive research, such as Donis's knowledge of the mushrooms?
Yeah. I mean, everything Donis knows, I had to figure out. I did learn how to make meth from the Michigan State Police. I did have a source that was a retired FBI agent who's Native and would answer any question I had. I had another contact who was a federal prosecutor. So I would be like, okay, if someone committed this crime and this crime and this crime, what would they be charged with? What kind of sentence might they get? What if they're 18? What if they're younger than 18? How does that change things? And so I've just been really fortunate to have some great sources that help me give that story that plausibility. My internet search history is scary. I will say that too.
Oh, FYI, that was Leanne Barton who asked that question. Yeah, hey Leanne.
Blast from my past. I love the people that I've been just the luckiest person in the world. I've always worked with the best people, and yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, we have a couple more questions here. So Dawn wants to know how long it took you to write the book. You said you had the idea for it when you were 18, but how long did it take you to actually write it? And then Martha wants to know if you plan on writing a sequel.
Well, it took 10 years for book 1. So I had the idea at 18, but I didn't start writing until I was 44. And my boys were teenagers. My daughter was a preteen. And I just, decided to write so that I would have the story finished by the time she was in high school, but I didn't count on it taking 10 years. So by the time it published, she was a senior in college. But hey, it takes what it takes. And then my book contract with Macmillan is for two books. And so it's not my second book is not a traditional sequel per se. It's set in a different year and a different main character, but you'll see some familiar faces. And if book one was Indigenous Nancy Drew, then book two is Indigenous Lara Croft. And the main character is reclaiming ancestors from museums and private collections to bring back home. And one of her heists goes very, very badly.
That's the most I've heard. We've had lunch at many China Garden lunches. We try to get squeak some details out of her. She's like, nope. So that was good.
Yeah.
Hearing it first.
Well, and to that point, can you tell us a little bit about what we might see on screen?
So the Netflix series, when you, this is what I have learned, is that when you option the movie rights, you give up a lot of control. And so the most important thing you can do is deciding who to do business with. And so I feel strongly that the Obamas, my little Michelle Obama mug, the Obamas and their company, Higher Ground Productions, I feel like it's going to be a quality production, and that they share my value for representation in front of the camera, behind the camera, in the writer's room, all levels of production. I really don't know the timeline on it. It takes what it takes. We do have two head writers who are working on the first script. So I'm really excited for it.
Well, we're going to keep our eyes peeled on Netflix to see whenever it's ready, and we're very excited. And we have a couple of questions that are just more like explaining some of the terms you've been using for some of our audience members they may be unfamiliar with. So Lois wanted to know if you could explain the terms Chippewa, Ojibwe, and Anishinaabe Kwe, and how those terms get used and are connected to each other.
Sure. So Ojibwe is what my tribe is, tribal nation, but I guess anglicized version or colonized version of that is Chippewa. And then Anishinaabe is more like, I think it's broader than just one nation. It's, bigger than that. And and I think of it more like Great Lakes, Indigenous people. So Potawatomi, Odawa.
Anishinaabe is our, that's in our language, how we refer to First Nations people or Indigenous people. It can be anybody, but when they hear Anishinaabe, they know we're talking in our language, so they assume that we mean the Great Lakes area or the tribes in Michigan.
Yep.
That's great. And while we're talking about names, Martha wanted to know a couple of other things about whether you've ever participated in a blanket party, but also what does Donis mean, and is Sault Ste. Marie a character in the story, and whether you think that there are some strong elements of racism there as well.
Well, short answers here so we can get to more questions. Donis means daughter. I knew a student who had that name, and I just thought it was beautiful. To me, it drove home one of the layers in the story, which is Donis's connection to her family. let's see. If I had participated in a blanket party, I would not talk about it. And let's see, what else? There are resources where you can learn more about the language. Ojibwe.net is one. And so I encourage people to, learn more about the language if they're curious. Also, the audible version or the audio version of the story is narrated by an Indigenous actor. Her name is Isabella Starr LeBlanc, and she worked with Margaret Noden from University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee on the pronunciations for all of the Anishinaabe and all of the Ojibwe language.
Okay, we are running out of time, but we did have some questions about doing land acknowledgements and where people are sort of beaming in from, and if you could say a bit about where you are or where some of our viewers are. I know we have invited people from all over the place, and given the power of the internet, people can be in lots of different places. So I don't know, Melissa or Angeline, if you want to speak to why we didn't give a land acknowledgement today.
I personally don't do land acknowledgements. I mean, I have complicated feelings about it. And one is that when it feels performative and when it's done, but nothing has changed for the Indigenous people that are local to that community, it just feels like, oh, okay, we said our land acknowledgement, we checked that box, and now we can get on with our program. And it's like, wait, I don't think you understand the scope of what this means. And because of that, because it feels more performative, check the box, than something that truly impacts the lives of Indigenous people from that community or from that area. I don't know. I have difficulty with it sometimes.
Yeah, and we want to respect that. And also we feel like there are lots of voices that need to get lifted up, and it's important for us to also make space for people to share their own stories. And Angeline, you said books are good medicine. We agree, and we think hopefully people got a good dose of medicine if they have read this book. And if you haven't read it yet, we'll put the link one more time so you can pick up a copy. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kathy because we've run out of time and we have to say goodbye.
Miigwech to the Book and Author Society for hosting this. Miigwech to Melissa, dear friend, and for this opportunity. And just read books, just read read stories. I hope this makes people hungry for more because our stories are so varied. We're not a monolith. And so my tribal community is different than Melissa's, and those stories are going to be different. Doesn't make them any less valid, So
I want to say, Miigwech, to Angeline and to Melissa, I have so enjoyed your conversation. And Angeline, truly, I dreamed about this book. I don't know what that means, but it was so powerful. And so I haven't read a book in a very long time that made me laugh, made me cry, made me feel, made me want to smack something really, really, really hard a couple of times. And just so powerful. And I look forward to reading everything that you write, and seeing the series, of course, on Netflix, but also recommending this book. Really, all over town. So I truly, is it Chi Miigwech?
Miigwech, big Miigwech, big
Did I
thank
say that right? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I hope that you will come back and see us again. Both of you, Melissa, you were a fantastic conversation partner. And if you ever want to converse with any of our other guests, you are most welcome. So just please, you have a home here. So whenever you would like to come back, because I'll be asking. So don't hesitate to ask too. So what I want to mention before we close is please don't forget that Angeline is the keynote speaker at the Oakland Literacy Council Ex Libris event. So if you'd like to hear more and maybe you're not in the Detroit location, you can attend virtually. Just check out the Oakland Literacy Council website at oaklandliteracy.org. And it has all the details about how you can purchase a ticket and attend online. And don't forget also that if you would like a book plate to put in your copy of Firekeeper's Daughter, it is signed by Angeline. Just go to the Book and Author Society's link to bookshop.org and we will make sure to get that out to you. If you take our post-event survey, that's the way that we get your address so we can send that to you. So last but not least, before we go, I do want to mention a couple of our other upcoming events. On Monday, November 8th at 7 o'clock, our guest will be Ni Vo. She is the author of The Chosen and the Beautiful. And if that sounds like a title from a Fitzgerald novel, you're close. She wrote a take on The Great Gatsby, which is told from the perspective of Jordan Baker, who has been recast as Asian and queer. And I just think that that's going to be such a fascinating program. On Monday, November 15th, we're talking to Jean Meltzer, and she's the author of The Matzah Ball, which is like a romantic comedy from the movies come to life, about a Jewish romance writer who goes to a party and maybe finds true love. So if you want something like a romantic comedy book, please join us, and that's going to be a lot of fun as well. And then our final event for our fall series is Mallory O'Mara is the author of Girly Drinks, A World History of Women and Alcohol, nonfiction, and talks about why, we get margaritas and daiquiris and the men get scotch and bourbon. So, and much, much more. So anyway, I just so appreciate all of your time tonight, all of you attending, and especially Angeline and Melissa. Just thank you so much. Chi Miigwech, and please come back and see us again. So everybody have a good night. Be safe, be well, keep reading, keep reading.
Bamapi.
I'm up here.